turn off clicks and likes and viewers. You know,
That's groupthink.
I know.
There's way too much of that on the right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there really is. There really is, and I think especially when it comes to art, you know, and that's kind of you know, sort of what initially got me interested in this Taylor Sheridan topic, and I've been wanting to do this topic for like a year because there was this Atlantic article that came out back in December of 2022, how Taylor Sheridan created America's most popular TV show. And it's kind of the center of the debate right now because originally it's kind of like Yellowstone was, and I've always seen all of Taylor's work as being center right, or at least center, kind of down the middle, and giving kind of both sides sort of, you know, sort of equal share in a lot of ways, but more center right. But it's like originally it's the red state show, and now everybody's all up in arms and saying it's this woke show, and it comes from this this quote from the Atlantic. Taylor Sheridan insists that Yellowstone is not a red state show. They refer to it as the conservative show or the Republican show, the red state Game of Thrones. And I just sit back laughing. I'm like, really? The show's talking about the displacement of Native Americans and the way Native American women were treated, and about corporate greed and the gentrification of the West and land grabbing. That's a red state show. And I keep thinking to myself, these are all things that Teddy Roosevelt stood against. So why aren't these Republican things? Why aren't these things? I mean, I stand for this. I stand behind this stuff. I don't want to see gentrification of the West in the way that the people on the show want it. They want to build an airport in the middle of Yellowstone. I don't know any Republican who would be for that.
I mean, he doesn't want to say, I mean, who knows what his politics are?
Yeah.
Who cares? He doesn't want to say this is a red state show because then he's turning off part of his audience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what woke people do.
Right.
And, you know, when Hollywood wants the money, they go back to core values. When they want an audience to actually watch a show or watch a movie, they go back to core values.
When they want PRs, when they talk about woke stuff.
Exactly. So, you know, but you know, this agenda-driven crap doesn't tend to make any money, and even when it's allied with like powerhouse franchises, we're seeing that box office and viewership eroding dramatically over the last few months. So, you know, this is a dead end for them. Yeah, I just think, you know, if you're honest, I mean, I don't care what a creator's politics are as long as they're honest.
It seems to me like he's trying to write for everybody. I really, the more I read,
a universal audience. I mean, what an idea.
well, isn't that something that we saw more of in the 80s and 90s?
Well, it's something we saw all the way through. I mean, even the dalliances with the avant-garde filmmaking in the 70s,
mm-hmm.
It was still about stuff you could relate to.
The auteur.
It was still about gangsters and things like that. I mean,
yeah,
you know, it wasn't about whatever the hell it is they're doing now. It's like hollowed out, you know, almost AI-driven crap we're seeing.
Yeah. Another interesting quote from this. I like this Atlantic article the more I read it because I think it's completely honest. It says Sheridan is right that the show's politics are not easy to pin down. Yes, it's a red state milieu, along all those guns and horses, big open vistas, along with its veneration of honest toil, cowboy masculinity, violence, and characters who have a general resistance to change, may have drawn rural dads who fear, like John Dutton, the end of their own ways of life in a changing America. It doesn't have an explicit ideology that maps onto a traditional red-blue spectrum. It's a mishmash of generally anti-capitalist, anti-modernist populism, pro-rancher libertarianism, conservative environmentalism. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but it has a steady Teddy Rooseveltian roots and is sympathetic, pro-Native American revolt of the oppressed. The series isn't a sop to conservative values, or at least it's not only that. What Sheridan is up to is slyer or maybe just muddled. I think that's pretty dead on. If you really, I mean, I like the fact that I think art should be open to interpretation, like this show, even though Keenan Ivory Wayans once said that television is not art, it's programming. And that's something that this new guy over at Paramount talks about when he talks about working with Taylor. He said, we need this kind of programming. you know,
Well,
but
yeah, I could argue with some of that description because, you've got it's sympathetic to Native Americans, but Sheridan's smart enough to be honest. I mean, some of the bad guys on the show are Native Americans.
right.
They're self-interested. They're corrupt. Some of them.
Well, and also the bad one on the show is also a bad one in real life.
The one that got fired.
Yeah, for stealing like that hundreds of thousands of dollars while still working for Yellowstone.
It's crazy.
So and you've got your strong female character,
Right.
but it's a well-rounded three-dimensional character that sometimes you like her and sometimes you don't.
Well, yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about whenever we start.
Well, let's talk about Beth for a minute because I want to state the obvious. I started watching the show when it first started, when nobody was watching it. I feel like I kind of came early into Yellowstone, like I did Cobra Kai. So I'm going to sit here and thump my chest and say that I was here first, and now it's hugely popular. I'm always onto these things early, not really, but anyway. When I first saw this show, I had just come off binge watching 12 seasons of Dallas during COVID. So I immediately just said, oh shit, Taylor just reinvented Dallas. Yellowstone is South Fork. John Dutton is Jock Ewing. Casey, or the brother that dies in the first episode, that could have been Bobby. And then you've got, who's JR? JR is Beth. Taylor turned JR into a chick, which I think is actually pretty deft, because we were talking about this last night. I think that Beth is able to get away with more being a woman. She can be more brutal, more ruthless.
Yeah, she's a femme fatale.
Totally.
She's right out of film noir.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a terrific character.
Yeah. But what about the females?
Well, I'm going to save it for when we're live.
We are live.
Well, you know what I mean.
We're recording. Go for it.
So you're just going to cut this up?
Yeah. I mean, I'll introduce Chuck in a minute, but I just figured I'll just go.
Okay. No, well,
Since we were talking, and that always happens. We always start out really strong, and I'm not recording, so it just,
Well, I mean, I wouldn't have been looking over and doing work. I thought we were just.
That's okay. I was covering for you.
Wow. Well, I mean, we were talking about it. Well, I guess I don't want to say, but about pro-life characters in general. I mean, it's not just that Beth is pro-life, but they show this person is scarred for life because of this thing that happened to her, which is supposed to be like empowering and, all the healthcare and all those things that they say about it. And, to me, that's the strongest thing, because it's not even just because even people that are pro-choice could see, the picture of a sonogram like in Cobra Kai and maybe still be pro-choice. But to actually see someone that's basically scarred for life and does these terrible things because of it, I mean, that's like a really strong message.
Yeah, because I mean, that's what makes her sympathetic. Mm-hmm. Not just losing her mom in the way that happened and everything else, but I mean, you have these deep sympathetic feelings for her, and it's and it shows that psychological scarring that anybody would feel. I mean, it's a loss. It's a loss, and whether it's pro-life or pro-choice, it's just part of the character, which is what I like. It's not messagey at all. It's not preachy at all, but it makes you think without telling you what to think. And I think people need to see that. It's just once again, it's honest. It's honest.
Well, I think when also what you said that I mean, not even just Beth, but there are lots of characters that are flawed. Like, I mean, Monica, comes off Casey's wife comes off as very selfish sometimes, and then other times she comes off as level-headed. Certainly in the season finale, she ended up kind of coming around and seeing like maybe what might be best for the family. But I'm trying to think of who else.
Well, I think
a lot of people, even the senator's past her prime, she still comes off as sexy, and a good match. And Summer, for all her faults, sometimes comes off as sympathetic because you feel sorry for her that she doesn't know what she doesn't know, and that they show her ignorance. A lot of the stuff about whether or not it's a woke show because they have this environmentalist, that they show this environmentalist being not a Mary Sue, but certainly being ignorant about lots of things, is really eye-opening.
Well, I like the fact that in the writing, the women are actually integral to the story.
Mm-hmm.
You see a lot of these shows where it's like basically a man's world kind of show, and the women characters seem wedged in somehow,
Mm-hmm.
like they don't really have a place in the story. And in a lot of these shows, when you see the women scenes, the story comes to a dead halt while the women have an exchange, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like when you used
anything.
to watch The Simpsons and you realized it was a Lisa Simpson episode or a Marge episode, and you're like,
but this show, they're actually part of the story,
Mm-hmm.
which is refreshing.
Yeah.
They're not just there as token characters or representations of womanhood or whatever the hell. I mean, the things that they think empower women in stories, to me, more often demean them.
Mm-hmm.
And these characters are truly empowered, or they have actual character arcs. They don't start out perfect and just keep going that way.
Yeah, well, and also, a lot of times they're, controlling the men. I mean, Beth obviously has her father's ear. Christina has Jamie's ear. And also, one thing that when I was looking up who the women were in the show, I didn't realize it until I saw her picture on IMDb. The woman who brings in Christina, Caroline Warner. Don't you think that's kind of like a Hillary Huma thing going on? I mean, she's very Hillary-like, and then they bring in this young-looking, Huma-looking character.
Kinda, yeah. Yeah, I wonder if that's casting or if that's because apparently Taylor writes for characters. I don't know if he goes to that degree.
Yeah, I don't think that. I think the Huma is probably forcing it, but in the photo, she definitely looked very Hillary, the one that was on IMDb.
No, but I think it should be said that Beth Dutton's got to be the most popular female pro-life character on television. I would say Johnny Lawrence is probably comes in second. And I loved how they teed up with Cobra Kai at the end, how Johnny's, when she breaks it to him that they're going to have a baby, she's not quite sure how he's going to react. And I wasn't sure how they were going to tackle something like that. And it's just elation. I mean, he's so excited. He's so jazzed. And so, he looks like a blessed man. And I think that was a cool, it was a surprise to me to see Hollywood do that, to go in that direction, frankly. But for the character, you talk about an arc, it means that he's got a second chance. That's redemption in a lot of ways. And it could even bring he and Robbie closer together at that, kind of at that stage. So I think for that, they've got a final season coming up, and that should be good stuff.
Well, what's interesting though is for all of the political side talking up, the pro-choice viewpoint and abortion. I don't know if there is any positive representation of it in entertainment, because even when it has been in girls, it doesn't come off that way. And I think people kind of know it is a sad moment, and it's very hard to portray it as this positive, empowering thing in entertainment. And they generally don't do it. They always portray abortion generally as a sad thing.
Yeah, they don't celebrate it.
Peggy didn't have one, but in Mad Men, it's always sort of like this sad thing that's never talked about again. Or in the show Girls, which was definitely woke, or tried to be woke. The main character, played by what's her face, Lena Dunham. When she tries to have an abortion party and realizes, wait, this isn't fun. This is actually kind of sad. And that's when I wrote about it, in that even girls try to do it, and it's actually kind of gratifying that they kind of realized in the show that this isn't necessarily something to celebrate. I mean, maybe they still think it um, you know, should be legal and all of that and available and all that. But they kind of realize, in that episode, there's something kind of wrong about celebrating it the way that women's media tells us to.
Well, third wave, fourth wave, fifth wave feminism or whatever, telling these women, abortion's great. It's a fantastic thing. Basically having sex with as many partners as you can, that empowers you, and all these things. Deep in the human heart, we know that's wrong. Whatever they're trying to program you to do, human nature is it's either going to kill your soul or awaken you. But it's just sad seeing what's happening to women in our culture. I mean, they're being replaced by men.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And you have this weird, group, this small minority with a loud voice that celebrates all of this. Let's face it, deviancy. And I mean deviancy from basic standard human emotions.
Yeah, it's the whole trans thing is just bizarre to me from the standpoint of the feminists. I just don't get it. They've sort of surrendered to a bunch of men with basically mental illness.
Well,
I don't know how else to characterize it.
It's similar to like in Hollywood, where the only ones that can really sort of afford to stand up is someone like J.K. Rowling, who cannot be canceled, who like similar to, Sly or Clint Eastwood or Schwarzenegger back in the day, people that were so successful, they could, sort of throw bones at being a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the thing is, I mean, somebody like J.K. Rowling, even if you successfully canceled her, she's still a billionaire. I mean, you can't actually go take the money away.
Yeah.
I just wonder why some of these people just don't say, "Oh, the hell with it," and just go live on an island.
Yeah, I mean, they need her. They need her to keep that franchise going.
Oh,
I think they're finally starting to realize that.
She hasn't apologized, which is great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll go ahead and introduce you. Chuck Dixon is a veteran comic book writer with thousands of titles to his name, including a record run on Batman at DC Comics, where he co-created the villain Bane along with Graham Nolan, and seminal work on Marvel's The Punisher. His other work includes extensive runs on titles as diverse as Conan the Barbarian, Nightwing, The Simpsons, and SpongeBob SquarePants. Chuck, it's been a long time coming, but welcome to Political Punks, and we are discussing whether the work of Taylor Sheridan is woke. And it's like I said, this Atlantic thing came out a year ago, but this spun up the other day on Twitter, and a lot of conservatives were just going absolutely out of their mind seeing this show through a completely, totally political lens. And that's a question that I wanted to pose to both of you. Do you think, when it comes to, because conservatives, are super policy wonkish, and I'm sure a lot of these people who I was seeing on social media are policy wonks and people who sort of eat, breathe, sleep politics. Do conservatives consume too much politics to where they see it everywhere? They're just kind of myopic, because I've always was under the assumption that art should be open to interpretation. That's how you pull new people in and expose them to new ideas. Art is in the eye of the beholder. Shouldn't that be the case? And do conservatives see things through a political lens too much?
Well, the ones that argue about it on Twitter, definitely, right?
Yeah, I mean, Twitter's not real life, but I mean, I have some friends who are in these posts. I'm not going to name names. When
I signed on yesterday and was looking at it, I'm just like, why are people that I thought were basically smart and got it, like arguing about these silly things? So I think there's also two different classes there. Why are conservatives this way? And I don't think, if you just judge Yellowstone based on the numbers and success, clearly most conservatives don't feel that way.
15 million
people that
strong.
argue about it professionally, a small group of them do feel that way.
Well, and one of the things they were talking about, Chuck, was Monica, who I've always looked at as a token liberal character. Casey's wife. There's a scene where she's teaching class and she's talking about Columbus and colonialism and just pouring into all of these old tropes and crap that a lot of us got in high school. You probably didn't, but Gen X did, and
Oh, I
millennials
did.
Did you get it too? Yeah.
Oh,
So,
yeah. We had
you know,
commies in our high school.
white man bad, as if the Native Americans weren't savages to each other. You know, I've always felt that like Last of the Mohicans and Jeremiah Johnson and like maybe the Revenant. I think when I think about accurate portrayals of Native Americans, probably Dances with Wolves as well. There's good and bad, and these
Right.
tribes warred with each other, largely for territory. They would enslave each other. I mean, they were brutal to each other, as the white man was brutal to other white men. So this is nothing new. It's just called the human condition. But either way, there is that scene where she's espousing all this kind of historical, reductionism. And I think to myself, when I think about the liberal characters on Yellowstone, to me, they're tokens amongst all the other characters who are largely all sort of center right to a degree. But I mean, that's not why people tune into the show. People don't tune into the show for Piper Paraboo and her portrayal as Summer, who again is somebody who seems to be a character of which others can teach lessons with. Beth, especially Kevin's, John has made great points to Piper and tried to educate her, and I think Monica has a pretty interesting interaction with Summer over peeling potatoes. So I kind of look at these characters and I think to myself, are they tools for the other ones to sort of bring the audience to conclusions in a way, along with the character in that sense?
Well, I mean, it's good to have the characters come from different directions, but as far as conservatives being overly aware of politics and entertainment, we've been sensitized to be aware of politics and entertainment. Because let's face it, a lot of creators of entertainment have it in their agenda to directly offend conservatives, directly offend Christians. They create material, hoping that it will, make certain viewers turn off. I mean, I don't know why they do that. I guess they get their giggles about that. But so we've been sensitized to it. I mean, I'm not the only one. Anybody watching this has done the same thing. You're watching some show you've never seen before. You're giving it a try and you're enjoying it. But in the back of your mind, you're like, when's the cringe moment coming? When's the lesson coming? When am I going to be forced to see something I wish I could unsee?
Yeah.
And we all do it. And if you get to the end of a season on a show and none of that has happened, it's like, wow, I feel like I should go back and watch it again because now I don't have to worry about it. Now I know I don't have to worry.
Exactly.
That I'm going to be presented with something that, is ridiculous leftist screed.
That's how I felt about Cobra Kai. It's funny. I don't see Yellowstone as being like an anti-woke show, but I do see Cobra Kai as being an anti-woke show because they lampoon the left and make fun of them on that show, which I don't think any modern show does.
Well, you gotta wonder on a show like Cobra Kai, did that lead character get away from them? You know what I mean?
Archie Bunker.
I was going to say Archie Bunker when they created
Alex P. Keaton.
When they created All in the Family, Archie Bunker was supposed to be the bad guy, but the viewing public embraced him.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I was saying in the Twitter debate, is that even if you accepted that Taylor Sheridan was woke and was trying to do the show that way, it's gone the Archie Bunker route.
Yeah.
So what do you do with that? I mean, do you ride that? Do you if you're a studio?
Yeah,
I mean, you're talking about, man. You cash in.
Oh yeah. I mean, hell, I'm old enough to remember, Archie Bunker bumper stickers, Archie Bunker buttons, all kinds of Archie Bunker merchandise that CBS signed off on. Right. I mean, they didn't care. He's a bigot and he's terrible, and okay, but people love him. And why do people love him? They didn't love him because he was a bigot. They just loved him because he was a throwback and he didn't guard what he said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, also, don't you think like a lot of times when we talk about like anti-woke, like I kind of think that the opposite, and this is what I think I can't remember if I wrote it in my interview with you on Pop Culture Warriors or if I've just written it elsewhere in pop culture warriors, but the opposite of woke isn't conservative. It's just being entertaining and not stuffing, this character and that character in to teach a lesson.
Yeah, I mean, there shouldn't be politics and entertainment of any kind. I mean, the left has moved so far left
Mm-hmm.
that anything can be viewed as conservative now, and where it would have been probably center left
Mm-hmm.
A few years ago. I mean, just think in the last couple of years, the changes have been insane to what you can't say, and lists of words you're not allowed to use, and things you're not allowed to talk about, and this tamping down of free speech we're seeing everywhere. When you see something free of politics, you go, "Oh, well, this is a conservative show." No, it's just free of politics. Leave It to Beaver. Was Leave It to Beaver a conservative show? No, it was just free of politics. Who cares about that stuff?
Well, and that begs the question, does entertainment now have to be just one side preaching their crap to their side, for 45 minutes with commercials in between? Because that's kind of, that's with all the complaining I see about, how woke this show is and how woke this show is from conservatives. And they seem to just like to complain about a lot of things rather than support things or, have recommendations. And we will have recommendations on the show because we're not just going to complain about these conservatives. But I just think that it's be constructive, in that sense. But I mean, I don't want to watch, woke SJW stuff any more than I want to watch a Hallmark Channel sanitized right-leaning weird stuff. I'm not a 700 Club guy. That's not my thing.
Wait, aren't they accusing Hallmark of going woke though?
Oh, really?
Well, they have, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're pandering just like everyone else. But I mean, what's the end result of this? I mean, ask the 7,000 Disney employees just let go.
Mm-hmm.
That's the end of the road here. And how long they're going to keep doubling down on this, I don't know.
I think the bills come due, don't you, now?
Yeah, it has, but have they learned from it? You still see corporate America shilling for the left, even as their sales get hurt. It's like, where does it end? Where? I mean, I heard there's nearly a stockholder revolt at Disney.
At Disney, yeah,
they managed to quiet down.
It's led by a pro-Trump guy who wants an end to this stuff and a return to just traditional American values and going for the lowest common denominator, which is what Paramount is doing right now with Yellowstone. Right. It's 15 million strong, and at this point, regardless of what the Emmys do, and the Emmys have snubbed them for years, and I think that's kind of where these questions about is it a red state show came from. I think it was all somewhere around time the Emmys, and it's kind of like, I think, didn't they just win some Emmys? Didn't Kevin didn't they finally throw him a bone?
Yeah, he won, but he wasn't there because of the mudslides. He couldn't leave his house.
Oh, okay. But I think it's like they don't want that stigma. They don't want it to be known as the red state Game of Thrones any more than they want it to be known as the woke show. They want to somewhere find that commercial through line to everybody, and because that's how you make money. Because again, this is programming. Mm-hmm. As much as we want it to be high art, it isn't. Even though it certainly looks like it the way they shoot that show. I mean, Chuck, it's like, to me, everything is like a Marlboro commercial in this show. You know what I mean? I mean, the silhouettes and the golden hour. I mean, he's romanticized the West in a way, maybe not seen since like John Ford or Lonesome Dove. I've never seen visuals really quite this good. All of his shows have great visuals, but it's just funny how much he's romanticizing it. And I think he's made the Western cool again, kind of like Urban Cowboy and Dallas, and maybe even the Eagles and Linda Ronstadt did in the 80s, like that whole cultural shift. People were wearing all kinds of Western stuff. I'm sure you were wearing snap shirts rather than hibiscus, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, everybody had Western shirts,
right,
back in the day. Well, and the thing is, I mean, you talked about how popular the show is. I think a measure of this I read recently, where like Beth Dutton T-shirts are the biggest thing on Paramount's website. Now, this is a website that has Star Trek stuff to sell. But no, Beth Dutton stuff outsells all of it by magnitudes.
These are Beth Dutton's earrings. They're porcupine. For real.
Awesome.
For real.
There's an article, I think, in the Wall Street Journal, because it's kind of funny that it ends up being kind of the opposite of the show, and that people are going to Montana and doing, bachelor parties and kind of having this cowboy experience. And then Paramount has a website that sells, some are like T-shirts that say, I'm the tornado, you're the trailer park,
Right.
the Beth line. But then they also sell stuff that she's worn, like these earrings. And this basically the only thing I could afford of Beth's. But a friend of mine actually, for his wife's push gift after she had a baby, bought Beth's coat, which was, I think, like $1,500.
Wow. Wow.
But yeah, they are selling, they're capitalizing on the actual things. They have Rip's hat, John's hats. Not all of them. Some are set worn or set used, but most of them are just the same maker.
Yeah, I mean, that's all, proof positive of the popularity of the show. That's a measure. People are spending bucks on this stuff. Like I said, on a website that has lots of other franchises, tchotchkes available, but no, they're ordering stuff from this show.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting when you think about Paramount and you just think about all of, that's Viacom, that's James Bond, that's RoboCop, they own so much stuff. And I really applaud them, giving Taylor all this creative freedom and money. They've shelled out a lot of cash for these shows. They don't shoot in LA. They shoot in Texas. They shoot in Montana. They shoot on location. They even shot 1883, the last shot in Oregon, which is part of the story. It's the Oregon Trail. Mm-hmm. And Sam Elliott's last scene, which is just tragic. You got to watch that, Chuck. I think you'd like that.
I got it. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. Again, people were saying that was super woke, and that the main character, who is a girl, was kind of this Mary Sue. I didn't see it that way. You be the judge, but I just think in a lot of ways people are just keep looking for it. It's like, and if you look for it enough, you'll always find it if you look for it. Yeah.
Well, especially given art's open to interpretation.
Well, the left is always accusing the right of whitewashing history, and there are some things that happened, like Native Americans fought with each other and we fought with them, and we, did bad things and they did bad things. And I think both of those things are shown in the shows. Similar with 1923 in the Catholic Church, that happened, but it also happened worse in Canada than it did here. And, we don't want to be accused of the things that we don't want to actually be the things that they accuse us of, and whitewashing some things that actually happened in history.
Right. But if you don't show only the bad sides, then you're whitewashing. It's like, wow, it wasn't always miserable every single day in the past. Good stuff happened too.
Sure.
They should the good stuff.
I want to try and play this clip. It's very short. It's from Hell or High Water. And when I first saw it, it didn't really mean anything to me. And then I read that originally it was written for another actor. He couldn't do it because it requires the actor to be on horseback, riding, and repeating his lines. This actor couldn't do it. So the director of Hell or High Waters called up Taylor and said, dude, I need you to fly down here and do this part. It'll take you 20 minutes. He did it in one take. It just goes to show you not all actors are cowboys. But I kept thinking about this line, Chuck, and you can tell me if I'm crazy or not, but if this works. But it's kind of like the impetus, I think, in some ways, to why Taylor does the Western so well, and also why he does the Western, not just because it's his background, but also because I think it's a way of making the West cool again.
Hey, what y'all done? You burning this field?
Why in the shit would we do that? It's kicked up on the highway. Been chasing us ever since.
Wish we could do something for you.
Ought to just let it turn me to ashes, put me out of my misery. Cut that fence! 21st century, I'm racing a fire to the river with a herd of cattle. And I wonder why my kids won't do this shit for a living.
You wonder why my kids won't do this shit for a living. It's dirty jobs. It's very Mike Rowe. The cattle industry, farming, not just cowboying, but farming, any kind of rural life. It's very frontier. It's very hit or miss. It's you know, some days you break even, and that's a good thing. You know, some days you make some money, but oftentimes you're just hoping you break even in these businesses these days. And I love the awareness that the shows have, Hell or High Water and even Yellowstone, brought to ranching and rural life and middle America. And then I think to myself, so how the hell can it be woke if it's doing that, if it's focusing and sympathizing and empathizing with these people? But, you know, how do you make it cool again? How do you make that kind of work to where someone's kids in that lifestyle, a farmer or a rancher or a cattleman, wants to do it? You've got to romanticize it. You've got to make, the biggest jump in recruiting probably still in known history in the last 40 years is Top Gun.
Yeah.
You know, that's how you do it. That's how you make it. And that's how you make people want to join the armed forces at the time. And I know a lot of guys that jumped in because of that movie, you know, and I think that what he's doing in a lot of ways is the same thing, is making the Western and that lifestyle interesting and cool and dynamic, even if it is a very romanticized version of it.
I just think it's sad they couldn't find an actor. The original actor couldn't do. I mean, this doesn't.
It's such a tiny little bit, you know, such a tiny little role, but he couldn't steer the horse around to the truck and do his lines and then cut the fence and then, you know, take the horse, you know, to the left. It's really funny, but it's.
Well, I didn't realize until I just saw it, but I think everybody, but especially Rip, are kind of, because Rip Cole Hauser, right, is a California boy, because he's, I think, the son of one of the Warners.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Warner
he's Hollywood royalty. Yeah.
He's a California boy, and I didn't realize it until now. I think everyone's kind of doing impersonations of Taylor because he sounds like him.
Yeah, Taylor grew up somewhere north of us in Texas, on a ranch, and his folks have pretty rich history in cowboying. I think his dad's in the Cowboy Hall of Fame. But Chuck, are you watching Tulsa King?
No, I am not.
Really? Okay.
I haven't been watching. I'm a old school. I was waiting for it on Blu-ray.
It's another one. It's another Taylor Sheridan, Sly. I guess they wrote this script on the phone in like about 4 hours, apparently, one day.
Sounds like Sly,
the pilot. And I think it's decent. I find the show kind of falling into a lot of sort of just sort of old tropes, 80s, 90s tropes. You know, his driver, who is a 20-year-old black kid, he sends him to go buy some fancy ride down at the local car dealership, and the guy won't sell it to him because it's a black guy with cash. And I'm thinking to myself, doesn't sound like any, you know, car salesman I've ever met. You ever see used cars? That's car salesman. You know, they'll do anything.
Yeah,
They don't care. You know, but you know, it's like then it turns into this confrontation between Sly and the dealership owner, and it's like I keep everybody saying, well, this is woke. This is a completely woke scene, and I'm like, no, it's just this old sort of trope. And really, it's basically an excuse to give Sly somebody to hit, and
Right.
that's what ends up happening.
Right.
And then it's kind of like the lesson is, you know, you're afraid of things that you shouldn't be afraid of. You should really be afraid of me, the white guy in the suit, not the black kid in the, you know, with the bag of cash looking to buy me a car. So it's like it falls into some weird, I think, and lazy writing, which, you know, obviously you're familiar with.
Well, it was also like a way to show Sly beating someone up, and I think that's probably like what the point of the scene was.
Like I said, it's just about let's give Sly the impetus in a scene to hit somebody. But it's just, to me, it's just kind of lazy, and it's lazy writing, even though it looks great.
But isn't that what we're all here for? To see Rocky beat someone up?
Yeah, I mean, you know, they're going to lean into, you know, they got this movie star legend on this thing. They're going to lean into everything everybody wants to see Sly doing. So can't blame them.
Well, I mean, you've worked with Sly, you know him. I mean, do you think Sly would ever do anything that's woke? I mean, to me, that's kind of a deal breaker between him and his fans. And no, I think if he does something woke, it just does too much damage to his brand.
Yeah, no, I don't see that at all. I've never talked politics with him, but you know, you get a sense from his work who he is, and you know, all he cares about is, are you entertained? You know, is this scene moving the story forward? You know, could this scene be more interesting? is there a better way to say this? I mean, knowing him and finding out his involvement, not just from him, but from people who work with him. It's like he came on the set and completely changed this movie for the better. Saying, why don't we do this? And why don't we do that? He's one of those guys, which got him the undeserved reputation for a while being hard to work with. No, he's not hard to work with. He's just demanding, and he's not demanding for himself. He's demanding for the end product.
Yeah.
I mean, I talked to the guy who was head of effects on Cliffhanger, and he said it was an okay movie. And then Sly got cast. And he says, then it became a great movie. He says, because he says, everything you see that's wonderful about that flick is him, his suggestions. And you see it over and over again. I watch a movie with him and I'm like, okay, you had to have rewritten this scene. You're the one that rewrote this scene. He goes, yeah, I wrote that speech, or I wrote this, or I wrote that. So, once you get to know him, you see his touch in everything he does.
Did you watch the recut of Rocky IV that he did?
No, I haven't seen that yet. I'm anxious to.
It's good. I liked it. The funeral scene, he really tweaked. Probably the fights he did quite a bit of tweaking with, improved them, and but the funeral scene he really tweaked. And
I'll have to check that out.
I love what he did. I really love. I think he turned it into such a more powerful scene, and I think the message. I think it kind of redefined the message of the movie in a lot of ways. It's weird because it's out of place. It should be kind of at the end, but it's there sort of in the middle. It's the transition point after Apollo dies. But such a gorgeous film. And again, it's like he would have never done that without COVID. It's one of the jury. It's like getting me out of COVID got me out of jury duty, and it also gave us a better cut of Rocky IV. So I mean, it's not all bad.
He was trapped in the house and wrote a bunch of episodes for the Leave Uncaged TV series we were talking about.
That's right.
He wouldn't have gotten around to, except he was going crazy in the house.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there any news on that? Is he going to?
No. It's his problem has always been he says yes to everything.
Yeah.
So his schedule is insane. I mean, the guy is a total workaholic. And everybody that's ever worked with him will tell you the same thing. He just never stops moving.
Yep.
So he'll still get back to it. He mentioned it in a recent interview about Tulsa King. So it's still on his mind.
Maybe hopefully his popularity at Tulsa King, because they're approved for a second season. Give him some creative freedom. Maybe with Paramount, maybe they do something. They move on it because one of the things Taylor Sheridan said recently was that nobody at Paramount's given anyone more creative freedom since when Bob Evans was running the place back in the 70s and the late 70s, I think early 70s and late 70s. Nobody's had this much creative freedom. He's talking about himself. Right. And they really have created quite a little empire over there. And I think that they're smart to do so from the standpoint of Viacom Paramount. They own all of these properties, all these IPs. But, what's important, again, is creating new stuff. And that seems to be really hard to do these days. Everything's got to be respun or relaunched. Now we're going to get a Starsky and Hutch, which is all female led. Hopefully Elizabeth Banks is involved because that means it will fail. And, it's like there's nothing new. And it's like you go back to 1984 or 1983. Look at these years where Hollywood is churning out 24 movies and got all these new properties, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Ghostbusters, E.T., Blade Runner. I mean, and all the things that we're recycling now. And I think that Paramount's smart to see what they see in Taylor, give him creative control and give him money to produce because he's creating an empire for them. Well,
it's merit earned. And, we're starting to see where conservation of risk is running into the law of diminishing returns.
Right.
Where, reboots and remakes and sequels and everything else, the wheels are coming off. And when you look at the leading indicator for me is international box office, which is starting to erode. So they got to come up with new stuff. They're just so afraid to, and for the most part, don't have the talent to do it. There's probably a lot of talent out there that could do it, but they keep turning to the same people over and over and over again. Every reboot and every remake has the same, half dozen people involved with it. So what do you think what do you think the end result's going to be? It's just going to be the same forgettable crap you produced before and people are onto it.
Yeah, there's no risk in doing these reboots. Other
Well,
than the
I think there is if you spend $200 million.
yeah, I should rephrase that. There
You know,
hasn't been up until now,
no, yeah. I
but I
mean,
think you're right. There's this diminishing return. People are just sick of it. It's tired. I think even the superhero movies are starting to kind
oh yeah,
of grind on people.
no, I mean they've reduced, both big studios for superheroes, Warner's and Disney, have both reduced their schedules and delayed projects, and,
Yeah.
cut on budgets on everything, because the cycle is coming to an end. And if they don't know their history, they should, because when these cycles end, they end overnight.
Mm.
And then you're trapped with, oh my God, I've got 6 things in production that I know no one's going to want to see.
Yeah.
I know we're not going to be profitable because the door closed, the cycle's over.
Well, now aren't they getting hit because when they try to do something with it, like the Black Widow girl, what's her name, who sued for digital release?
Yeah, Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah. And now, actors are kind of onto that, and they, want a piece of that. And, even studios can't, save some amount of money that's been put into something by just doing a digital release versus a theatrical release. And then also, speaking of which, did y'all see that clip of Steven Spielberg?
Yeah.
Telling Tom Cruise he saved the industry.
You see that, Chuck?
No, I didn't.
Steven and Tom are basically hugging and kissing at some award show, and Steven just said Tom's gonna get some kind, I think, the Producers Guild award, and he said, you really earned it. And he's like Maverick, he's like Maverick saved the movie industry. He's like, you might have saved theatrical distribution.
Yeah,
if they learn from it, take from it.
yeah, exactly. If they learn from it and do more of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, Maverick was, it's been a long time since I've walked out of the theater, on a high and feeling good, and just kind of that's sticking with me for longer than the walk to the car, right?
I was
like looking forward to seeing it again.
Maverick is like the perfect example of the opposite of woke not being conservative. And that's like, if you look at it, I mean, every type of person is represented in Maverick, but it doesn't have any meaning. Someone is not better than another person. Someone's not the automatic hero because they're this or that. There's nothing really political about it, except for, there might be a little bit of like deep state type of stuff, but everybody is represented, but not for anything other than that is what the military looks like.
Right. Exactly. I mean, diversity is not a standalone virtue, but if you're telling a story where the cast would naturally be diverse, then it makes all the sense in the world. And why not? Because you want to appeal to as large an audience as possible. But when you're, making a historical movie in which this minority would never have been there, and that minority would never have been there. It's like I always say, throwing a white guy in a kung fu movie does not make the kung fu movie better.
Even if
it
it's Chuck
doesn't
Norris,
work no matter what you do.
Even if it's Chuck Norris.
Yeah, well, okay, there are exceptions.
There's one exception, which I think is
Cynthia Rothrock. I'll give you them, but mostly no. You don't want that.
Yeah.
You don't want just for the hell of it. I mean, I've turned off so many shows because all of a sudden this character shows up. Historically, no, this could never have happened. This could never have happened. The Vikings were not a diverse culture.
Speaking of which, I've still got to watch The Northman. That still looks. I've heard it's like really artsy and crazy and kind of abstract in some scenes, sort of like The Green Knight. But that Northman looked pretty awesome. I mean, it looked like I don't know. It looked really raw and just sort of almost small budget, $20 million, but that seems to be the sweet spot these days where you can sort of do what you want. And that's M. Night Shyamalan. That's certainly S. Craig Zoller. I think that's about the budgets he's operating on.
I would be surprised if he had 20 million.
Maybe
So,
not. I'm sure these. It's like I was thinking. Rather than just complain, we should have some non-woke recommendations for the conservatives who find Taylor Sheridan's work woke, so they don't have to watch the Hallmark Channel. I thought we could help them out. I thought S. Craig Zoller would be a good recommendation to them. He's kind of a brutal, raw, but also very charming. Can be very charming director and writer. Chuck, if you had to introduce someone to Zoller, which film would you tell them to see first?
Riot in Cell Block 99 is just, oh my God. I mean,
Yeah.
I watched it with my oldest boy, and when it was over, I said, "What was the running time on that?" He says 2.5 hours. I said, "You're kidding." I thought it was like 80 minutes long.
I know. I thought it was like an hour and a half.
I was on the edge of my seat the entire time, and it's
Yeah.
got so many just awesome moments. That's the one I wouldn't use Bone Tomahawk because it would probably scare a lot of people away.
I saw Bone
That
Tomahawk
movie's
first.
rough.
It was rough.
Yeah.
But I thought, Patrick Wilson is just so brilliant in it.
That's a great movie, but it's not for the faint of heart.
No, it's brutal. It is brutal, and it's a brutal take on the West, and it's a very brutal take on a certain tribe of Native Americans that may or may not have existed. Who knows?
But could have.
Could have. It's called Hollywood. It's called make believe. That's why we like it. But I love Brawl in Cell Block 99. What did you think of Dragged Across Concrete?
I really liked it. I rewatched it recently. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it just goes back to 70s cop dramas and just sort of rolls around in the dumpster for 2 hours. I mean, I like a movie where I don't have any idea where the hell this thing's going.
Yeah.
And that's so rare now because you're like, oh, well, this happened. Now this has to happen. And I just got to say, poor Jennifer Carpenter, they got to make like a romantic comedy for her someday. So she has like a happy movie to be in. I mean, she's Dexter's sister. Then she's in, horrible things happen to her in Brawl and Cell Block 99. Really horrible things happen to her in Dragged Across Concrete.
Yeah.
It's just, but yeah, I mean, that's, once you're into what these guys are doing, Dragged Across Concrete is cherry on top.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I don't know if it's one of the strongest out of, but I think like any director, the guys, he takes big risks, makes really hard decisions, to where you as the viewer, you're like, whoa, wait a minute. It's like when Vince Vaughn gets taken out, I'm just kind of like, wait.
This isn't supposed to happen.
No, it's kind of like the end of Dark of the Sun where I'm like, wait, stop. This is going off the rails. This is not how I want it to go. I don't want Jim Brown to get knifed. I don't want him to get killed. Hey, tell us about the spin rack, because I know you and Graham are developing this, and it sounds very cool. I want to help get the word out because I know you promote it on social media, but I think a lot of people don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah, well, promoting things on social media is like pushing a rock up a hill.
Sisyphus, right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Just to go off on a tangent a little bit, I posted the same thing on Facebook and Twitter at the same time. 4,000 people saw it on Twitter. 12 people saw it on Facebook. I mean, that's what's going on here. So I welcome the chance to talk about Spin Rack. It's basically the next step in the evolution of comics. Mm-hmm. It's digital comics, it's NFTs, it's games, it's merchandise, it's eventually moving into the metaverse, and it's based on all the IP that Graham Nolan and I own.
Okay.
And the important thing to remember is we didn't license this to Spin Rack. We are Spin Rack. Spin Rack is creator-owned, creator-driven. It's not just Graham and I. We have top people from gaming, from tech, from the film industry, from finance that are backing this. And we got a big PR machine getting ready to spin up and get the word out on this. And it's, and Graham and I own an awful lot of intellectual property. And these are like two huge comic book universes joining forces. So,
yeah, I mean, Graham's got he's got what is his book? He's got the Frankenstein book.
He's got Joe Frankenstein, which he and I did together. He's got Alien Alamo. He's got the Chenoo. He's got the Ghost of Matacoma Key. He's got Monster Island, and these are all like his, shared monster universe.
Yeah, I backed
And
Monster Island. I remember I got that one. That was awesome.
Yeah, I've got Law Dog, My Sister Suprema, Winter World, Something Big, just tons and tons of material here that's we're going to be able to exploit and get out there. Basically, remind people that we're still doing comics is the big thing. That was the thing for me when they said, we'll promote you and it's a level playing field and you don't have to keep doing the social media thing to get your name out. I'm like, okay, I'm in. So, because I don't have to keep doing that. Because I mean, both Graham and I hear from people, how are you still doing comics? It's like, we never stopped doing comics. It's just once you leave DC and Marvel, it's hard to get, your work noticed on a grand scale. I mean, we're both doing well, and our potential audience is much bigger than the people we're reaching right now.
It's tough to find people to buy comics on social media. Mark Millar and I have talked about this. It's he doesn't think that there's really a whole lot of people on Twitter necessarily who want to buy comics, which is interesting because I mean you see a lot of comic book artists spending time on Twitter, but Facebook's probably a better place, maybe a little bit more friendlier from the standpoint of finding customers. Older.
If they didn't have their thumb on the scales, I mean that's the problem.
Yeah,
and they
absolutely.
do. They definitely, you are either favored or not. They say, well, if you pay this amount of money, we'll reach this amount of eyes. And it's like, well, I don't know that you're doing that. I pay you the money, but I have no way of proving whether or not these people have actually seen the posts.
Yeah.
And in my experience, I can move the needle through direct messaging more than paying Facebook, which tells me maybe you're not showing it to all the people you say you're showing it to.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know how the algorithms work these days on Facebook.
Well, they work the way they want them to work. That's
pretty
the
much.
secret. I mean, they make it sound like it's just magic and you put the numbers in and it all just comes out at random. I don't think so. I mean, these algorithms are guided. We know that.
Yeah, I mean, things are getting better on Twitter. I will say that.
Oh, absolutely, things are better on Twitter.
I'm getting more interaction, and I'm getting kind of more ROI for my time there. Standpoint of what I post, just from the standpoint.
Wild Wild West again, the way the internet used to be.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and I miss that about Facebook because Facebook used to be that, and it used to be pretty wild and a whole lot of fun, and now it's just become sort of this big, really heavy sort of. I don't know. It's just like it wants to be all things to all people, where it would seem to be much more simple platform. Maybe say 10 or maybe 5 or 10 years ago. It's just no fun anymore.
No.
Well, what will be interesting because they bought Instagram and are now integrating stories and videos so heavily into Facebook. I mean, it was kind of a gamble because if TikTok ends up getting banned or something, then Facebook is going to be in a good position. They started doing all those things.
The shorts are the big thing now, whether the Facebook shorts and then also the shorts on YouTube. Those things,
on YouTube, yeah.
The algorithm loves those things and puts it like way up top when you do any kind of searches. So it's like, if you can exploit those kind of things because they change them all the time. But it's like it's like they used to talk about the attention span of all of us Gen Xers back in the 80s was like this much. And that's when they used to complain about the editing. Oh, the editing, it's so fast clips, and that's what the kids want to see. They want to be bombarded with visuals. And it's like now it's like that attention span is like this.
Well, and it's like 1 million of these like right in a row, and they're just glued to the phone.
It's like, how long is this video? 3 minutes. 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Like an eternity. I can't sit still for 3 minutes.
I'm trying to take it's like the stuff I do for TPI and like edit it down to like 30-second to 60-second clips, and you have no idea how hard that is. I mean,
us olds can't talk in 30-second clips.
The olds.
And the thing is, you got to consider your audience too. I mean, I do my videos on YouTube, but they're generally an hour or longer because most of my audience basically listens to them on the way to work. So they don't care how long they are.
Yeah. Yeah, you do the Ask Chuck Dixon, you do the questions. Where do people submit those questions?
BrunoBookstore.com. They can just go to Facebook. They can go to my Twitter. Give them to me there.
Cool.
Wherever you find me, just ask me the questions. I'll find them.
Right on. What else you got going on aside from Spin Rack?
Still doing work at Arc Tunes. I got My Sister Suprema
Mhm.
with Anthony Gonzalez Clark. I got Something Big wrapping up with Frank Fosco.
Cool.
And, I have Rambo First Kill from Splato Comics.
Right. I will be doing the cover for that when it's done with Dale Keown.
There you go. Yeah. Oh wow. I'm anxious to see that. I haven't seen the art for that yet.
I've neither.
Yeah, but it's
It'll be good. Dale's awesome. He just takes.
Oh yeah. We're looking for sales to increase once we're able to show people that cover.
Yeah.
But we've done well with the campaign. It's in demand now. But it's Rambo's first tour in Vietnam. It's his year one, his origin story.
This one's doing better than the Expendables. Why do you think that is?
Rambo.
Yeah.
And it is kind of hard to resist. I mean, who doesn't want to see what he was doing in Vietnam? It's kind of been a question mark all this time.
Yeah.
What made him into John Rambo?
Mm-hmm. You get a little bit of that in the flashbacks in First Blood, but that's about it. And I think in some of the other movies, but not much. Not much.
Yeah, it's a straight up war story, and a lot of it's based on stuff that vets told me that I couldn't use when I was doing the nom for Marvel because they wouldn't have worked with the comics code.
Okay. Violence.
Yeah. This is some really nasty stuff.
Okay. That's cool. Where can people find that? Is that in demand?
It's in demand on Indiegogo.
Okay. So Rambo First Kill?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. I reached out to Richard I think in December, and we just started talking again. And he was like, dude, he's like, if you've colored Dale Keown before, right? And I'm like, yeah, I colored him on Avengers, years ago. He's like, you want to do this cover for Rambo? I was like,
cool.
Are you kidding?
I'm glad you're part of it.
I was just like, anything, Sly, man. I mean, anything. I was, I was just pissed that I didn't, get in touch with him before, so I get on some of those interiors because some of the stuff Aaron Alfeche is doing is beautiful, and some of the interior.
Oh my God, yeah.
So really, really talented guy. I think he's is he in South America or is he Philippines? I forget.
I don't know where he's from. I think he's Philippines.
Philippines, yeah. Well, Chuck, give everybody your social media coordinates so they know where to find you since we are out of time.
Dixonverse at Twitter, chuckdixon.net, and spinrack.io.
Cool. Lisa?
Twitter at Lisa DEP, on Instagram at Lisa_DEP. My Substack is getbright.substack.com. So cool stuff there. And hopefully by the time this is up, there will be clips of me on Gutfeld on Fox News.
Yes.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.